Back at it, boys.
What a finish. Oh my God, I just aged 5 years. What the hell is going on? We're like having this podcast and all of a sudden it's like, what the hell is going on?
You know what? What happens when you get a lead in the NHL, or certainly in a tournament like this, you rest on it. The other team's desperate. They're playing hard. But the old assholes pucker up really, really tight when you have a lead like that. And that's what happened with Canada for sure.
Bring it up to LaFontaine. He gets tripped up, gets it to May, and over the line. He's May going in on goal. He shoots.
Welcome to Overtime with Mayday Hockey Podcast.
Welcome to the Overtime with Mayday Hockey Podcast, the only hockey podcast that takes our hotter than goalie's temper after a bad call. Welcome, everybody. Let's start this off. We've got Brad Mayday May, our host extraordinaire. Brad, what's going on, brother?
You know what? Life's amazing. We're watching the Four Nations Cup right now. I think we're going to be in store for a Canada-U.S. final. As long as everything goes well, we're going into the third period here. But no, you know what? Life is amazing. Still get to hang around the hockey world, get to play some golf against professional athletes in every other sport recently, and just loving life.
Dude, you are living the dream. I want your life. I love it. I love it, man. And our other co-host, Chris T-Man Tammus, our sports guru, statistics extraordinaire, and stud muffin galore. Hey, Chris T, what's up, buddy?
All good, Rocco. All good.
Awesome, man. What have you been up to?
Family day long weekend, right? Just watching some hockey. I think we all watched the game on Saturday, right? I mean, that was a hell of a start. A little bit disappointing result, obviously, for Canada, but the start of that game was incredible.
The best ever. 9 seconds, 3 fights. Kachuk brothers. Man, like I was screaming. My wife thought I was having a heart attack. So it was the best start. Crappy finish, but the best start so far. So hopefully we can get the boys to finish up today and punch their ticket to the final.
You know what's cool, though? The best team won Saturday night. The Americans, they were faster. They were more physical. The start of that game was fantastic. None of us expected it, but obviously Brady and Matthew had other things to do, and it was really cool. It was cool to see Brandon Hagel step up and accept that. And he was, he wasn't going to back down from Matthew Tkachuk. Battle of Florida there between Tampa and Florida, as the Panthers. And then, of course, Brady, big dude. And
he's a big boy, yeah.
He was impressive. He's a big, strong guy. But you know what I really like about Team Canada? The way they've responded today against the Finns. They came out flying. Of course, McDavid doing what he does best. And then McKinnon's got 2 already. So Canada's, they lit a fire under their backsides for sure. And I think we're going to be treated to an incredible game on Thursday. Canada's got to obviously pull this one out, but since the game's still playing, but part of me has to be a little disappointed for the Swedes. They've played 2 good games and they're going to play a third game, and it's not going to matter to them because if Canada wins this one, the 2 teams have already punched their ticket.
One thing I didn't realize till after the game on Saturday was Brady called out Bennett from the bench. So Bennett, he called the centerman who was supposed to take that draw off, so because he knew he was going on strictly to fight him. I thought he was already on. I didn't know until after that he called him out from the bench.
And in fact, there was some sort of text going back and forth, a group text with Team USA saying that they were going to actually kick off this.
I guess that's how these young guys, they communicate by text. Old-fashioned days, you'd sit down before the game started and you talk to your teammates in the locker room. But you know what? This was predetermined. But the bottom line is a lot of people were questioning, the format of the Four Nations Cup. There's no question there's some great hockey players and great countries that were left out of this, but were they going to play as physical? Were they going to be all in, or was it going to be like a glorified, all-star game? And these guys, maybe, taking it the easy way. Yeah. So I was at game 1, took two clients actually down. We watched the game, Team Canada. We watched it from a box Thursday night, and I watched the Americans play the Finns, and I sat literally the first seat behind the goal, behind Connor Hellebuck. It's a tough seat to sit behind because anytime he stood up, he's about 6'4" and 6'6" with skates. I couldn't see the rink, whatever was in front of him. But I was like a goal judge in that game. But it was cool to see the speed that these guys play the game at. It's remarkable, and we're treated with these guys are passionate. They're playing for their countries. It's the first time a lot of these guys have played since the World Juniors, best on best, and we're being treated by some great hockey, and hopefully there's going to be some more to watch.
I went to a Leaf game in Jersey one time at their old arena, and we thought we had great seats, 4 rows off the ice, which they were. But what we weren't told from the broker we bought them off is you're right behind the goal judge. And at that time, he was still sitting on a bar stool in glass about this thick. So we watched like the entire game through a Coke bottle, basically.
Yeah, you think you got a great seat and you're right on the glass. It is amazing when they're actually in your view. But when you're trying to stare up the ice and you're behind the goaltender, it's not easy. In Montreal, the crowd was absolutely bananas. Mario Lemieux came out, they announced and welcomed him to Montreal, and the roof blew off the Bell Center. That was probably the loudest cheer I've heard since I was doing TV in Vegas.
Wow, that's such a great rink. It is so loud. You get Montreal, you get, some of these big cities like that are truly passionate. And you'll go to some cities that it's like you're checking a pulse to see if somebody's alive in the stadium, but it is loud for a hockey rink. It is just functioning. I remember my first hockey game I went to was at the Old Forum in Montreal back in probably about 79 or something like that. We went on a student exchange in junior high, and we go out there and we're in the very last row at the very top of the arena. And there's like a post in front of all of us. It was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. There's a little TV. So we stood there and that's what we did.
What's funny,
Montreal.
That first game was, Brad, they brought out Mario and Richter and Elfie and Timu, right?
Timu, yeah.
I was thinking, I think Sid played against all of those guys. Like they were the old timers. And there is Sid who's played against all of them, right?
Played against all of them and lived with one.
Yeah.
Right? He lived with Mario for a couple years when he started his career.
Yeah, wild stuff.
Which is awesome. But, Crosby's still playing great. I mean, he is like lights out. He's playing. I mean, he's an older guy, but he's playing the passes he's making. I just saw that in that first game against the first game against the Swedes, as well as the second game with the U.S. I did see that some of the stars didn't know where to go. Like, they know what they're doing when they're with their teammates and how they play. We haven't practiced a lot. So there was a little bit of that. Sir, yeah, here I am. You go there. I'll take this from here. It's just kind of how that communication happens and has to happen with a game like this in such a short period of time. Now you have to produce at a very, very high level.
Well, I said that's where the Finns, and of course today it hasn't presented itself, but they play a very similar game. Every other player in this tournament, for the most part, they're used to carrying the puck and being that guy. There's only one puck on the ice, and you're playing with superstars. And somehow, quickly, you have to understand the communication and where you should be, where you fit in that hierarchy, if you will, on your lines. But hockey's got a great language. You don't have to speak to each other. You don't have to speak the same language. You skate, shoot, you hit, you get in the right side of every battle, and all of a sudden it's seamless. And the best players, obviously, they're capable to pick up. But it does take a little bit of time. And with this format, they didn't have that many days to prepare as a team, but that's where the management comes in, great coaches, and you just got to trust yourself, go out and be a player and do the best you can.
Mayday, let me ask you, you played World Juniors, 91, Canada wins a gold. It's an incredible moment, an incredible tournament, but I'm thinking of like Sid now going back to Pittsburgh, they're out of the mix. The team you played on that year in the O was a very good team. You guys made the finals. But what is that dip like for those first couple regular season games back when, you're on a bus going to Sault Ste. Marie potentially after just the high of winning the gold medal? There has to be a bit of a dip there, I would think.
What are you saying about the Sioux? What are you saying about the Sioux? There's a lot of Italians there. It's a good place.
Yeah, well, for me, I flew back from Saskatoon, and I actually had to catch up with my team. We were on a road trip. We only go to the east in Ontario. I think we went Kingston, Ottawa, and I played in both buildings. And the coolest part, in the Ottawa building, it was really neat because Chris Snell was a player who played with us on Team Canada. we've got a great standing ovation from the crowd. They welcomed us as, World Junior gold medalists. And so, yeah, getting up for those games were pretty difficult,
Yeah.
but the fanfare that I actually stepped into quickly, you snapped right out of it, and you wanted to play, and you wanted to give whatever you could do. You wanted to give the fans, or even yourself, the best showing possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty easy to get back into it because everybody was so proud. And pretty much for the next 2-3 weeks, every building I played in, you had a little cheer, a little standing O for, the reigning World Junior gold medalist. And it was really cool. That's a neat part about being on a team like that. Obviously, in a country that just celebrates their hockey as good as they do. I had that experience. It was cool. Had we lost, I think those games would have been miserable.
Yeah.
Sure they would have. Who played net for you, Mayday? And was it one goalie for the entire tournament, or did they split it up?
No, it's Trevor Kidd was our goalie. Trevor's first round draft pick, Calgary Flames, and Felix Potvin, the Cat. Obviously came out after that a year or two later, and he made his debut with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And obviously he was a great Maple Leaf. But the two of them, and I think Felix played 2 games in the tournament. If I'm not mistaken, we played most of our games in Saskatoon in the big arena, and we drove to Regina, Saskatchewan, and we played 2 games, one against Norway, one against Finland, if I'm not mistaken. And those 2 games, Felix played, gave Trevor a little bit of a break. Those are games that we were expected to win, or we expected to win. And Felix played great, but it took all of us, in myself, I was just coming back from an injury. I hadn't played hockey the whole season. I heard it at the training camp in the summertime for Team Canada. And so I had only played 3 hockey games going into that tournament. So I was kind of more of an extra part to the tournament. I did get to play, but I actually sat beside Scott Niedermeyer, who was a 17-year-old at the time. And Scotty obviously went on to win a gold medal and a championship in every league he's ever played in. And what a superstar Hall of Famer he turned out to be. We stood beside each other. We were like the grocery sticks on the bench. We separated the forwards from the defense. So, but I got to hang with a Hall of Famer, and we had a great time, and we ended up winning the Stanley Cup together many years later.
And it's that,
That's awesome.
Felix Potvin's development sort of catapulted the Leafs in the 90s because that allowed them to trade Grant Fuhr, which got them Anderchuk. But
absolutely. And I was in Buffalo and we got Grant Fuhr. So it was a nice run. The only problem, because Fuhr's one of the best and one of my favorite people, but crazily at that time when Grant got traded to our team, that was wonderful. But we had Dominic Hasek, and none of us knew. Players knew he was great, but nobody in the hockey world knew that this guy was going to be a Vezina, an all-star, and probably the best goaltender in the history of the game.
And had he already been in Chicago by that point, or?
Well, he was in Chicago,
Yes,
and then
that was his second team.
Yeah, and he had a great debut there. But Chicago had Jimmy Waite and Ed Belfour won back-to-back Vezinas.
Yeah.
So Dominic he was behind two All-Stars, Hall of Famers, until he got his chance. But every time he was on the ice, it was tough to score. And
could you sense that in practice? Like when you're going against this guy, you're like, this guy's a wall.
Well, here's the thing. I couldn't score on most goalies there, Chris, but no, we all knew how great Dominic was. Great opportunity for me coming into the NHL. I was a young guy, so I was listening to the older players, but I came in with Clint Malarchuk and Darren Pupa. Poops was a great goalie, as was Clint. And then Tom Draper comes in relief of those guys when they were injured. And then all of a sudden we have Grant Fuhr and Dominic Hasek within the first couple of years of my career. And it was a ton of fun. And knowing that you're playing, with these guys, but who's going to supplant Grant Fuhr, right? I mean, Grant was the guy until Dominic forced a trade, and they traded Grant Fuhr to the LA Kings along with I want to say Philippe Boucher went there. We ended up getting Rob Stauber as a goalie and Alexei Zhitnik, who turned out to be a great Buffalo Sabre.
The sort of 7 degrees of Brad May in the World Juniors, you played against Kachuk's old man, Nylander's old man. And then I just realized today, speaking of your rookie year in Buffalo, assistant coach was John Tortorella.
Yeah. Torts. I love John Tortorella.
33 years old.
For the hockey world that doesn't get it, John Tortorella is an incredible man. Just like loaded with integrity. Yeah, he's tough. But you know what the hard part is watching players or watching scenarios where they're questioning their coach because he's too hard. At the end of the day, if I could play another game in the NHL, it wouldn't matter if you had Victor Tikhonov. Shut your mouth, do what you're told, work your tail off, and you'll have success. And I think there's too much bitching and complaining about how players are treated. Boy, my coach is too hard. He works us too hard. It's the program's too hard. Do you know what? Anytime you're saying that, that gives you an excuse. That's a loser's mentality. You got to show up, do whatever you're supposed to do with your teammates, and together, band together. But John Tortorella, love that guy. As for Keith Tkachuk, he ended up being my captain in Phoenix with the Phoenix Coyotes when I signed a contract there. Little Matthew was 3 years old. My son was 4.5 at the time. And amazing. Sean Burke was on our team. His son ended up being an NHL draft pick. Jake DeBrusk, who plays in Vancouver now, his dad Louis was on our team. I'm trying to think, there was probably 2 or 3 other guys that had players or children that ended up being NHL draft picks. Oh, Claude Lemieux's son, who was on my team that first year as well. Brendan Lemieux played in the NHL for a number of years. Shane Doan's
son got drafted too, right?
Shane Doan's son got drafted. I want to say Philippe Boucher's son got drafted. Brian Boucher's son. That was a couple years later, but it's amazing as you talk about degrees of separation. All these players, these young boys that grew up, one of their first experiences playing hockey was in Scottsdale, Arizona. That's how the game has grown, and that's why the game's the best. And it still has a large area to grow, globally. But hockey's just 30 years later. In this story, 25 years later, because I got to Phoenix in 2000, it's so much better. These players are amazing, and I'm just glad that I was able to be there for as long as I was. But make no mistake, these players today are a lot better than we ever were. Now, the top end guys, they probably could compete, if not dominate. Obviously we're talking, your Gretzky's and Lemieux and Iginlas and Forsbergs and Sakic, Yzerman, all these players, Marc Messier, they would be standouts in the game today. But hockey's better. It's actually more controlled, which is maybe something that I'm a little miffed at. I love the physicality, and that's why I love the first 9 seconds of the first game in the Four Nations Cup. I thought, or the second game, but Canada-US, thought the energy and the passion was there. But these players, the worst skater when I got into the National Hockey League in 1991, there was defensemen that couldn't skate backwards. That they'd have to turn and skate forwards to catch up to the play and spin around. And today, these players are incredible. The worst skater in the NHL is better than most guys ever before. So then you get, I think the separation comes, between the years, how guys read the play at that speed, how they anticipate where the puck's headed, how the game's going to be played. And these guys, they were learning this when they were 10, 12 years old, where we were just playing hockey because we loved it and it was fun and we were creative back in my day. But these players are ready to go on day one, and they're in such good shape.
It's interesting with hockey sense the way it is and the level of intelligence related to the sport and also the technology that has helped that. YouTube. I mean, you can look at something, see something on the ice, you can watch it 1,000 other times. You can actually create that process. And you go back to how we learned to play, whether it's on a pond, at a rink at home, outside playing road hockey. You're learning, you see from others. You watch the Saturday night hockey game once a week. That's all you had. There was no replays, so all of that kind of plays. I remember going back to this 1972 Summit Series where we had to listen to it on radio in our auditorium and I remember I wasn't even into hockey that much at the time, but everybody else was. And I thought, well, this must be pretty important. And listening to this thing, right? And this is out of Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. I didn't think we had television until the Annex satellite in 72. So it was, it wasn't like you can just turn on TV and watch a Brad May make some moves and then go out and try it. You just couldn't do that, right? So the hockey sense is just so at a different level.
Well, like the equipment is obviously improved. It always does, and it will even get better. But you're absolutely right. That technology and the ability to, communicate, interact with that social media, or I say social media, but just the ability to watch what you did 6 seconds earlier on an iPad on the bench because it's, set up with these programs. These players understand what they're supposed to do, but it's all like just a repetition, right? That these guys, they see how they play. The best golfers in the world, and I love golf. If you watch your own swing, you think you got everything down, and then you watch yourself, you're like, my God, my swing sucks, right? I need to make all these changes, and video is one of the greatest tools going for athletes. And the idea of being in a team sport, the positioning and the way you're supposed to play as a group. Literally in 6 seconds, you get back to the bench. You're actually learning on the fly, as opposed to going to sleep that night, going to practice, and then having your coaches tell you what you did right and wrong. And they were probably in the dark 95% of the time as well, because back then you had to take the game on a beta tape or a VHS tape. This is talking early 90s. Prior to that, 72, they never had that. Very difficult to go over, basically watch your team and how you would, interact together. Social media, technology, it's only going to get better. AI is probably going to get introduced in this. I wonder how that's going to work. The last thing I want to see, though, in my lifetime, is I don't want to see any robots skating around, because but they're probably going to have that. I bet you that's probably 10, 15 years away. Not in this league, but I bet you'll have a robot hockey league at some point.
Well, I think you're looking at robot linesmen soon.
Yeah, probably, right? Because then they literally, with a chip in their, I say in their head, but wherever the chip would be. But just the idea of offsides, the speed of the game, and cameras at every angle, they won't miss anything. There's something about human error, though, right? And you want humans running this stuff. We don't want any of that stuff. But I'm sure the future's bringing it.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, for sure.
Look at the
for sure.
Mayday, you said Saturday. I agree too. The Americans were the better team, but I'm watching that game, and they sort of reminded me of the Canadian teams that we grew up watching when it was best on best. I wouldn't say Canada got bullied, but Americans initiated everything on Saturday. Like, it was all, you talk about the first two fights, but the Miller fight, Miller just had his gloves off, and he was just looking for anyone who was going to take their gloves off. Like, they were initiating all the physicality. They were initiating the play all night. And that was it was a role reversal for Canada, I thought, to what we've seen traditionally as far as physicality goes.
Like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Right. At the end of the day, this is kind of like lights a fire. Losing is a great thing, man. No, it's not great when you lose and you get knocked out of a tournament like this. But losing, you can learn so much about it. You know what you did good. But where did you make mistakes? Where did you falter? What was missing as a team? These tournaments are amazing. That's why I think all of us want to see Canada, the United States in the final. I hope I think we're going to see that. It's actually, it's incredible, right? It's incredible. I think Canada will show up with a different game plan somewhat, or certainly a different focus and energy. And you know what? The Americans are going to be playing in Boston in front of their country. They're proud people, extremely proud, great hockey players. I don't know. I go back to 1987 when I was a teenager watching Gretzky to Mario to beat the Russians in the third game, 6-5, 3 games in a row. That actually lit a fire under, I say myself, but my generation of, my God, this game is amazing. I want to be part of it. Mm-hmm. This rivalry and the Four Nations Cup, the NHL is amazing, but the Four Nations Cup, it's going to light a fire under some young girl that's actually has aspirations to play in the professional women's league, or some young boy that is in some nondescript little town or place. That dream is not really even a reality. It's so far away. All of a sudden, they're waking up today, tomorrow, maybe next Friday, with this newfound passion and energy that, hey, they're going to chase their dreams. I think this is awesome. It's great for the growth of the game.
I totally agree. What do you think about the timing of the event? So the Four Nations, in the middle of the season, like it sure beats an all-star event. I mean, this is like awesome. I'm in tune. I'm watching it. I'm trying to find more of it. It's, just I'm drawn to it. So what do you think on this process in the middle of the season versus how we used to have the Canada Cups and all these other tournaments preseason aspects?
Well, I think the NHL, 82 games, it's a long, long season. Wear and tear, fatigue sets in, and the stretch drive is another level. After the All Star game or the Four Nations Cup, the game's the games are gonna elevate, and then you get the trade deadline, and it even gets tighter and better, and then you hit the playoffs. I think the league should shut down for these 10 days every year, if not, make it 14 days, and give your players, your assets, give them a chance to recalibrate and refocus. It is a long year. I had a few opportunities because of Olympic breaks that were much longer than an all-star break. And as a player, we loved it. Here's the thing. For the NHL, they've always said that they don't like it. There's one reason why they wouldn't, is if one of your stars or that player who's representing their country gets injured in this event, then he's not available for his team, and it might derail a team's chances of chasing a Stanley Cup. I think that
Matthew
fear
is he's not playing today, and he didn't play the most of the Canada game, right?
So, and when you say that, it's there's a lot at stake. But guess what? You're playing the game of hockey. You could get hurt on a Tuesday night in the National Hockey League in 1 week from now too. So, for me, I don't really care about that. I think for these players, they deserve the break. The NHL and the players, they're partners in the NHL 50-50. And they still get their revenue because they're still going to play 82 games. It's just the league is, or the season it has ended later, right? It's ended in June most recently for the Stanley Cup to be awarded. I think these players deserve it. And I don't think they want to play less games because it is tied to the league-wide revenue. Owners want to make more money. Their franchise values want to go up, and players want to make more money. So how do you do that? You got to play more games. If they tried to shave it off, people have always talked, limit the games, drop it to 72 or 70 games. Well, 12 games, if I'm not mistaken, my math might be off, but if they dropped it to 72 or 70 games, that's about a 12 to 15% reduction in theory in a player's salary annually. So players are not going to go for that. They want to play as many as they can, but the league has always said that they don't like the break. I think the break's great. It's great for the fans because guess what? When you have season tickets in a market, going to like 41 nights to go to an arena over the course of 6 months, I mean, you really don't have any other social life. And obviously, if you're extremely wealthy, that's fine. You can pass your tickets off and pick the games you want. But for the true hockey fan to watch at home, to watch the streaming services, to interact and engage with the National Hockey League, this is kind of a nice break for everybody. It's just how do you fill in those moments, right, or those 2 weeks as a fan or workers in the NHL. It gives everybody a break, I think.
No, I agree. We're club seat owners. I share it with two other people. There's just no way you can do the 42 games plus preseason, and it's just the grind. It's like I can't even imagine these guys playing it.
But you know what?
That's just
it's the best rock. It really is. Yeah, you're going to have some duds. Your team's going to show up and not play, and some players are going to mail a game in or here or there just because. Literally, it's not an easy game, and it's it's tiring, and not to mention most of the year guys are playing with injuries, nagging injuries, but they still play. You're going to see we're treated to unbelievable hockey now in this tournament. The hockey that we're going to watch for the next 4 months, 5 months is going to be exceptional, and it's just going to be better and better as it progresses. And I do think like the 10 days off is a massive rest for these players, and mentally and physically.
You said it there though, Brad, right? I think it's spot on is the CBA, right? I mean, this money that's generated from this is going into the pot and they're splitting it. So the players are highly motivated to do it too. I also wonder, the NFL is going to add an 18th week, have the bye week after the conference finals, and push the Super Bowl into be what will be this weekend. So it rolls into President's Day long weekend. So essentially the Monday after the Super Bowl will be a holiday. And I wonder, this going forward, it could be the gold medal game could be the afternoon of the Super Bowl, right? Start the game at noon and it rolls right into the Super Bowl. Who knows? But I think there's also a little politics at play too. I'm sure they would like Russia at this event too, right? I mean, they would love to have Ovi there, but they can't.
For sure.
And then all of a sudden you can't do it over the short period of time with a bunch of countries. So to Rocco's point, maybe they do move it back to September like the Canada Cup used to be if they want to involve more countries.
True, but I do think the hockey's going to be better if it's at this time of the year. Players are ready to go. They're battle tested. They're actually in peak form. Showing up at the end of a summer, not playing and getting guys, it's a little rusty. Of course, you're going to be treated to great games and mistakes that end up being, game differences in games. But I like what's happening here. I didn't know I was a fan of it before. I thought that these players, I wouldn't say mail it in. I just didn't know how passionate these players were going to be and play. You look at Finland, Sweden. I feel bad for Sweden. If Canada pulls this one off, which I believe they're going to, this game this evening against the Americans is not going to matter other than their own pride. And you already see it. The Americans have the opportunity because they're already punched their ticket. They can sit some players out that need that rest. Kind of maybe contrary to what we wanted to see. But Sweden could end up with 5 points just like Canada, but they lost to Canada in overtime. And that's what happens when you have a round robin tournament. I'd like to see Russia. I'd like to see the Slovaks, Czechoslovakia. There's other countries that are very capable. Germany's won games in the World Championship. There's a lot of good hockey in this world, and I think it's sad for me as a fan that I can't watch Alex Ovechkin and Kucherov play and Vasilevsky because they deserve to be at this level, being a member of the NHL. But because of politics, listen, they're not the ones making decisions. They're athletes, and we're going to take the dreams away from young athletes to actually do this because of what's happening above them. I think that's unfair, although that is the world. Kind of sucks, but this is where we're at.
And when we're talking best on best, we want best on best. It's not just the four nations. There's multiple nations out there that can play this great sport that we love, right? And they just announced that Russia will not be, and Belarus, I believe, will not be at the Olympics. So again, this is Ovi's, I would think, last kind of dance. And now he is without that opportunity to go out on a high. Obviously, he's got the Gretzky target, which I obviously believe, as others, that he will achieve probably this season, I would think. But, having an Olympics, that's a huge thing in Europe. That is a huge thing in the world.
Honestly, let me ask you guys a question. In the Olympics, there's been Russian athletes in the Winter and Summer Olympics, but they're not actually competing under their country's brand, right? I'm not sure. I can't remember the name, what they called them. Do you guys recall?
Are they not there because of the political aspect, or are they still being punished for their doping scandal, like that Netflix doc Icarus, right? I don't know. Is that a spillover of that, or is it geopolitical, or is it both? I'm not sure.
Well, this one is geopolitical. I obviously, with what's going on now currently globally, right? So what's going on in Ukraine, that process has delayed or impacted that. And I think the doping scandal was the last Olympic process where they were not able to compete as Russia. And they had to compete under.
I think they might have even been called athletes of Russia, but that they didn't have their flag. So if they won an event, they just hoisted the generic Olympic flag, I believe.
It wasn't the Olympics. If we're looking for peace, right? I'm not suggesting that it's going to make create peace, but the Olympics was started to actually spread peace around the world and have this competition within sport. How in the world are we making determinations, or whoever's in charge of this decision The Olympics is 2 years away, man.
Yeah,
and you're making a decision today. Where next week there could be a summit and the Ukraine war is over.
it could be
maybe
by the end of the podcast.
next little. And my God, isn't that what we want? But why would you make a determination 2 years prior, other than maybe this is like a negotiating chip? I don't know. I think that it sucks because hockey. These guys are good people. They're hardworking. They're the best of what they can be, and they're excluded. Although I don't think they could do a Six Nations Cup in the middle of an NHL season because it'll just take much longer to complete when you have that many teams playing. So maybe it's just logistically impossible. But wouldn't you like to see Vasilevsky and Kucherov and these guys to see how they compete? Because it's going to be amazing. Canada States final, wonderful. Great for us.
Boys, we got a little thing happening in this game here right now.
What's going on?
Now there's 77 seconds left, and Finland just cut it to 4-3. They've scored 2 goals with the goalie out, and we're.
Oh my God! Hey, do you guys want to put it on pause for a second and watch?
Yeah.
Let's put it on pause.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Okay.
Back at it, boys.
What a finish. Oh my God. I just aged 5 years. What the hell's going on? We're like having this podcast and all of a sudden it's like empty net. Saros is in net. They pull the goalie. What the hell is going on?
It was a little.
You know what? What happens when you get a lead in the NHL or certainly in a tournament like this, you rest on it. The other team's desperate. They're playing hard, but the old assholes pucker up really, really tight when you have a lead like that, and that's what happened to Canada for sure. Although we've been talking about it, Chris is the smart one. He's got the screen right in front of him.
Yeah.
Smart. Oh, we're going to set that up.
I'm going to the smart one or just the guy with the smallest house.
Yeah. Whatever works, but at least you've got the hockey game. I had to run upstairs to my man cave office to catch the last game, screaming like a crazy person. Like, oh my gosh! I got to ask, what were your thoughts on Craig Binnington playing in this game? What do you think? I thought it was a good call. He plays the puck. I mean, I thought it was great.
So I listened to Doug Armstrong. He had an interview. I'm not sure if everybody saw that. Obviously, he believes in his goaltender from St. Louis. This guy's a Stanley Cup winner. He can play the puck really well. John Cooper had some quotes about him, about the ability to actually be like a third defenseman, like Martin Brodeur used to be. Just for clarity, it's Jordan Binnington, not Craig Billington. Craig Billington was a goalie, and Jordan Billington.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and as a goalie,
when I screw up, Rock, I'm looking forward to you. When I screw up, I'm looking forward to you giving it to me.
Great. Yeah,
and Mayday, you're talking about the Sweden game, buddy. You're talking about the Sweden game. I mean, in overtime, he made 2 10-bell stops that without those stops were not in the finals against the States.
100%. And Sweden, they could win tonight, finish with the same points, and honestly, maybe should be in the final as well. That's the hard part. You're going to see, obviously, these two teams disappear from this competition. All 4 countries, the Finns played incredibly well and hard, and obviously with a nice push at the end of this one. But for us, selfish, Canada, U.S., let's go. Let's go back to the World Cup. Doug Waite, Billy Guerin, Chris Chelios in 1998. You're looking. There's going to be nothing better than watching this game for this season for sure. Watching them play on Thursday night.
It's going to be a big one. It's going to be a good one, man. Well, yeah, it's. I'm still just jittery from just watching that last 45 seconds of pulling the goalies. So they put Saros in for the third period. He went in.
No, I think they put him in after the 4th goal, right?
After the 4th goal.
Wow.
Looking at the first 3 goals, though, McDavid goes posting in. McKinnon's on a breakaway. I can't even remember what, and the other ones, like he was letting in stinkers.
Hey, the old adage, what can a coach do? It's to fire up his team to basically put the pressure on the players in front of the goalie. A lot of times, sometimes, of course, goalie gets pulled because he's not ready and he's not playing well. That's not the case. That was probably to give his team a little shot in the arm that we got to do better. Our buddy just got pulled because of us. And you know what? Finland, valiant effort.
Yeah. Well, and they had burned their timeout already too. So essentially he burned their timeout after the second goal, and then 2 more goals. I think he's like, I need another timeout here. So that in itself kind of was a little bit of a reset for them.
Well, you know what? What makes this tournament so great. Any team can win. You have a hot goaltender. You've got great. Everybody on these teams are stars. They're superstars on their team in the NHL, right? So now you've got them playing against each other. So even if there's 24 shots, these are high quality potential shots on goal, playing against the best on best, and that's what we're talking about, right? Making it exciting and fun.
You know what's really cool about that going into this game here? Of all the first 4 games that were played, nobody had more than 30 shots on net.
Mm-hmm.
With all that offensive firepower, because guess what? Playing in a tournament like this, you play good defense, and you battle, you block shots, you do whatever it takes. It's amazing that the score clock hasn't been run up as like you'd actually anticipate. The best players playing good hockey.
Yeah, agreed. I agreed. You know, you think the McDavids and all these superstars that we've got, and the other teams, the U.S., it's best on best. So, I mean, defense wins games. They've got to go through 5 players before they get to the goalie. You know, so at the end of the day, it's the whole process. It's the team. Teams win this sport, right? That's what we love about it. Right?
And Mayday, you talked about how everybody skates now. I mean, everybody also plays a 200-foot game now, like they didn't necessarily do 20 and 30 years ago. I mean, nobody's loafing around out there. Everybody checks, right?
And I throw one more in there just to be the analyst that I once was. Fewer power plays. So most of your shots on a one-sided game is because you've been drawing penalties and your power play gets 4 or 5 attempts on a power play. That's, so power plays have been limited because players are playing more disciplined because they have to, and that's probably another factor of why there hasn't been as many shots.
Mayday, you were there, but I mean, how about that first power play goal against Sweden? I mean,
it was sick.
McDavid to Crosby to McKinnon. It was poetry in motion, and it took about 13 seconds, I think.
I was in the great store on would be Wednesday. It would be Thursday afternoon. I was in Lululemon on Crescent Street in Montreal, or St. Catherine Street in Montreal. I was in there. I was at the checkout counter, and a gentleman came up to me. And he's like, "Hey, Brad, how are you?" And it was Nathan McKinnon's father, and his mom and dad were there, and had a really nice conversation with them. And I actually said, "I go, how about that first goal?" And his dad beamed up with a big smile, and he's like, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "I was watching that McDavid to Crosby to Nathan. What an unbelievable dream scenario!" And so mom and dad were really, really pumped, and I'm sure they're even more excited now because they get to watch their son play in the final.
Absolutely. That's a Canada Post stamp moment. Something like that is, if this team progresses to obviously and win potentially, that, those moments are what, you galvanizes an entire country. I mean, go back to the Olympics versus Sweden versus Canada, where the overtime goal, Forsberg on Team Canada.
Oh, the postage stamp, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I know Corey Hirsch, good, great guy, talks about the stamp, it is that way. Like, there's one big play. In fact, I YouTubed that just a while ago, and back in the day, he was just about out of the hash marks going back in as Forsberg was coming into him
Wasn't the crease really big in that tournament too?
It's an Olympic. Yeah, it's Olympic. It was like kind of ovalish. Yeah, they're massive. But he was out and came back, matched his skate the whole.
Well,
thing.
No one had seen that move before either. It wasn't a thing. Right?
No, that the Forsberg move, whatever that. Yeah, that was incredible. Where'd that come from? So yeah, these great moments made by great people at the best times. That's opportunity, right? It's what you do with it.
We'll have Hershey on, and he can tell us that whole story. We'll even get Peter on as well.
Love it. Yeah, that would be great. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome back, everybody. Listen, this is our first interview, and we had no choice because it was just the best choice to interview our host and dear friend, Brad Mayday May. We're going to jump into an interview. Chris and I have got so many questions that we want to ask you, Brad. Just kind of your life, where you're at, what you've done from the start to the finish to where you're going, all these exciting things. And now, meeting up with us schlups to enjoy this podcast together, which is a great opportunity. So, quick introduction on yourself. I mean, look, what you're a first rounder, Buffalo Sabres, Stanley Cup winner, over 1,000 games in the NHL. I love the amount of PIMs you got. You were an all-around player. You were amazing. One of the things I did notice when I first met you, we shook hands. You have cinder block hands, man. They are the biggest things. I'm like, what the hell? I would not want to be hit with one of these things. Other than your amazing personality, that stood out to me right off the hop. So I want to kind of kick it off and jump in with an interview for a little bit and kind of tell us about the journey of your starting hockey. You came from Ontario. Tell us about what drove you to play this great game that we love.
I just grew up as a younger brother north of Toronto, in a small little community called Stouffville, and then we moved to where I am currently, little hamlet called Goodwood. As a matter of fact, it is the home of Schitt's Creek. So they film the show Schitt's Creek in Goodwood, Ontario, and that's where I'm actually going to be building a house in Goodwood. This is where home is. Grandma and Grandpa were here, and I went to Goodwood Public School just around the corner. So that's how I started, but I was a younger brother chasing my big brother Daryl in every sport. Got beat up every day of my life, by my brothers. The sibling rivalry that was there. I had a fire of trying to keep up and that never quit attitude, which probably younger siblings have. And it just kind of presented itself. I played house league hockey when I was 13, turning 13, 13 turning 14. Where I was cut from the AA team in Markham, which is where my brother and my mom and I moved when my parents split up when I was a younger kid. But through that whole thing, I got demoted, sent, whatever, cut from the team. And that was a massive, massive moment in my life where, you wanted to quit, you wanted to give up. It was, the first form or sign or form of adversity. And I went back, I played house league hockey. The cool part about it when I think back on it is I didn't have to play hockey with coaches. I didn't have to be on the ice and actually playing with structure, if you will. Because when you play at the higher levels, you're on the ice and you practice, but you practice as a team. I was able to go to the ice on free ice, and where you could go on the ice and shoot pucks and do whatever you want and try to be creative. For me, it really worked. And then when I kind of made the decision to go back and try to be more competitive, I had advanced because I actually had the time to get better and work on it. And you know what? Not be embarrassed again or not have that same feeling. So that probably I carry it to this day where, I don't want to be cut. I don't want to be knocked down. But if I am, that's the moment where growth happens and you learn. And you learn a lot about yourself. Two quotes I really like is adversity builds character. I always like to say to others, but speaking of myself, adversity also reveals character. For me, that's kind of my young story. I got to get drafted. I battled to play in the Ontario Hockey League, which is in the CHL, Major Junior, and I was a first-round draft pick after my second season with the Niagara Falls Thunder. I went to the World Juniors the following season, which was amazing. I only played half the season back in Niagara Falls because I was injured. And then going to that next tryout was trying to make the team that you were drafted by. Of course, you had great allies in the general manager and the scouts that picked you in the first round because they don't want to waste that pick. That teams that miss on their first-round selections are typically teams that don't do very well. You have to be successful with those picks. And I was lucky enough or fortunate enough to make the Buffalo Sabres when I was 19 years old, fresh, right out of junior. When my friends were going to university, I was going to the National Hockey League, which was really cool. And the next phase of that whole thing, for me, I was a tough guy. I think I was such a good fighter or capable fighter that I fought a lot more than maybe I should have, or maybe more than others would have. But I fell in love with that. I love the fact of staring a guy in the face. There's nothing better than teeing off and catching him square in the jaw. I still think that it's an amazing feeling. I miss it. Probably the only thing I miss about hockey is fighting, because I can still play hockey, but I'm not able to get to that same emotional level of best on best, or me against you and in front of 20,000 or 18,000 people. There's a real energy that comes from that. But making the NHL was really cool. I wouldn't have been able to make it if I didn't have, obviously, the coaching, which I love the guys that I was exposed to. Rick Dudley was my first coach. John Muckler took over and became the coach and general manager of our team. My first season, or not the general manager, but the coach of our team, became the general manager as well. So I had good allies, but more importantly, I had great teammates, guys that were 30 years old, a decade older than me, that took me under their wing, taught me how to just be an upstanding player, with character, but one that could do it with integrity, and one that could do it consistently, and that perseverance. Pat LaFontaine, Dale Howardchuk, Dave Anderchuk, Colin Patterson, Randy Hillier. These guys are all Stanley Cup champions. Well, Patty and Dale weren't, but they're in the Hall of Fame. Those other guys are Stanley Cup champions. And I got to marinate as a young guy and be sucked along in that vortex with those guys. And I do believe that because I had a great start with those types of players, Robbie Ray was my running mate, for a long time, on the physical side, Matthew Barnaby, Gord Donnelly, Bob Bugner, all these tough guys. So I was insulated, and I played 19 years in the NHL, and I wouldn't have if I didn't learn those lessons from those players and those guys that actually took time out of their days, when they're trying to be the best that they can be in a selfish, environment, to do that, to be great teammates. So that's my start. I'm so fortunate, and there's so many other stories to tell you guys, but that's how I got started, and I'm extremely proud. I'm really proud of the successes and the failures. I was suspended for 20 games in the NHL. That adversity I learned a lot from. It was a mistake I made. I hit Steve Hines with a slash in the face. Certainly didn't mean to, but I have to be accountable for my actions. And the NHL deemed my suspension 20 games, which was basically 2 months of the season. I was playing for the Phoenix Coyotes at that time. And just all these different little stories that kind of, make me the guy that sits before you today. Hockey's the best, and I'm forever grateful that I had the chance.
It's interesting. I was watching on YouTube greatest goals ever scored, and yours pops up all the time, the big Mayday goal. So we gotta ask you, and I'm gonna ask that question, and I'm gonna pass it on to Chris. But walk us through the Mayday goal. Was your nickname wasn't Mayday before that, right? Or was it?
No, never. It was either Mazy or Mazer, or there was always something added to your last name, but. Mayday from that point on, April 24th, 1993. It was around midnight, and I scored a goal in overtime against the Bruins to sweep the Boston Bruins. I think they were the best team in the NHL that season, and nobody believed that the Buffalo Sabres were going to beat them. They beat us in Game 7 the year prior, my first season in the NHL. Ironically, yesterday I was with Ray Bourque for the last couple of days. Ray's a friend. And Ray's a Hall of Famer, and you could speak about Ray all day long. It just so happened that he was a defenseman that I actually somehow, fortunately, got the puck through his feet on this move. And then the association with Rick Jeanneret, which the goal was really good. There's no question. And you know what? I scored that goal. So I have ownership of that moment 100%. And I'm proud of it. But what makes that goal extra special was the illustration by Rick Jeanneret's voice. I scored the goal, and I have a full ownership that I actually did that. But what makes that play or that goal special was the voice of Rick Jeanneret, Hall of Fame broadcaster. Amazingly, he was a radio broadcaster for the Buffalo Sabres, but his voice illustrated exactly in real time with the same images that you'd see on TV. Rick ended up being the first guy in hockey. I'm not sure if all sports, but where he simulcast radio and TV the rest of his career. Rick Jeanneret's voice was amazing. The way he could bring the energy into a moment. And we lost Rick a year and a half ago, and we're tied at the hip. When I hear the name Mayday, it's Rick Jeanneret's. It's his work that did that, and you know what? It's my nickname until the day I die, and I'm forever grateful to Rick. But on his side of it, he was asked. He goes, "How did you come up with that?" And he's like, "I have no idea. Never thought about it because Brad hadn't scored in 28 games or 18 games or something like that going into that game. Last guy I expected was Brad to score the goal, and I guess it was just a moment that he hadn't rehearsed prior. He says, and it was completely authentic, and that's I think why it's so special. And truly, I get recognized different places, certainly in the hockey circle, and the first thing that comes out of that person's mouth is Mayday. And yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Now, Mayday, I was a terrible hockey player, but I always gravitated towards play-by-play. Bob Cole, I would listen to that man read the phone book, and you'd go to Leaf Game at the Gardens, and Paul Morris, who just passed away last week, the way he would just his subtle call of announcing a goal was amazing, and I always loved that part of it. In any sport.
Can you give me a Bob Cole?
I can't do a Bob Cole justice, but I mean there are so many. The Gilmore wraparound goal, right? Solo job. Wendell Clark in that same series, Home Alone, and
what I think of Bob Cole is like he let the silence of the moment build as he was calling the game going down, and it was just this eruption. You could feel it coming, and then he'd be like, "Scores!" He would just one word, but you felt it. You knew exactly what was happening, and you brought that energy in. As for Paul Morris, you have to almost pinch your nose for it to do his voice, but
yeah.
Toronto goal scored by Wendell Clark, right? That's Paul Morris.
Amazing about him too.
And I love everything about it.
I've been fortunate enough to through a friend, I met Jimmy Holmstrom, who plays the organ at Leaf games, and their current PA announcer. And I asked him because Paul Morris, like a lot of time, the puck's in the back of the net and the Leafs are still patting each other on the ass and he's announcing the goal. They don't do that anymore now because it has to go through the league, make sure they get the assist right. So I always kind of miss that part of it too when the crowd – and that's also – the games were far more civilized. I mean, there wasn't a goal song all the time and they weren't pounding music down your throat. I mean, it was just to your point – Bob Cole would just let it breathe, right? And also the one thing, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here about play-by-play. The one thing that really bugs me now when I watch a game, if you remember a Bob Cole game, and I've heard stories where he would say to Harry Neal, when the game is on, I talk. The one thing, well, the few things that make me nuts about some of the play-by-play now is, because I've heard stories where Bob Cole would say to Harry Neal, when the game is on, I'm talking. When the whistle blows, you talk. Now there's chit-chat and there's storytelling and the color guy's always chiming in. And sometimes, if it's a quick goal or a broken play or a turnover, you don't get the call. And I would imagine for a guy like Jeanneret or any of these guys, that's the moment they're living for. And it's really got to irk them if they miss a call. But this brings me to my question that I've always been curious about. Miracle on Ice, probably the most famous call of all time and arguably the most famous moment in all of sports. But it's my personal opinion that moment is not nearly as iconic if Al Michaels does not say, "Do you believe in miracles?" That sort of ties it all in. And like you said, you said it perfectly there. You scored the goal. You're the guy who did it. So as a guy who just loved play-by-play my whole life, my question to you is, because like Rocco said, that goal is simultaneous. You can't think of that goal, your goal, without the call. They go hand in hand, right? So when you think of that call, when it replayed in your mind, is there an audio component in your memory? Because you don't know that he's yelling Mayday. And it's pre-internet. I mean, you probably don't even know about it until I don't know when. I mean, someone probably called you Mayday before you even heard the call. Like some fan on the street that night probably heard it on the radio and called you Mayday. And you're like, what the hell is going on? So when you think about that, has it got to the point now where you just simultaneously hear his voice when you think about it, even though that's not how it played out in your mind?
100%. In my mind, I think I was sleepwalking. I think I just had an out of body experience in that moment. I to be honest with you, I don't remember. I don't remember what I was thinking, how it felt, other than the noise and the craziness and going down the ice. You can see it by the images after I scored and all of that. I don't remember anything, but I've watched the clip so many times, and it's been presented to me. And when I get introduced to things, it's Mayday with that call. It's LaFontaine gets the puck, gets the puck up to Brad May in over the line. Oh, and then he goes off. I'm trying to think if I heard it again, I could recite it, but I think he said Mayday 6 or 7 times, and then but he's like at the end of the series of Maydays, and I think he says next stop or second round, something about the Belle Province because Montreal had already won, or whatever, something like that. I can't remember exact what it is today, but when it plays, I can actually recite it.
So let me ask you this. So again, this is 1993, right?
That's 1993.
So 1993. This is pre-internet.
Yes.
So it's mayhem.
There's no internet.
Right. It's mayhem. Bench is clear. You're the man. You go in the locker room. I mean, there was probably beer in the fridge back then anyways. You're drinking. So when does all of this cross your desk for the first time? When is the first time you hear this story? Was it that night? Was it the next day? How long did it take for you to be aware of the call?
It's a great question, Chris. I don't remember. I can tell you this. I didn't wake up the next day until about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. We went out and had a great time as a team. We went to a little nightclub called Kicks Nightclub by the Buffalo Airport. And our dear friend Donnie Carl, who ran the place, or he was the manager, as we walked in, and I had a group of people, as did my teammates, and we had a really, really fun night. And I don't think I probably heard it until because it was radio. So whatever you saw on TV, it was John Gertler and Barry Butel, and it was a nice call, but it would be just another goal, I guess, in the history books. But I would say it would be the next day. I'm a little fuzzy on that because I don't remember, and I was probably a little hungover.
Yeah, it would be like Mike Eruzione or Jim Craig, right? Like, when was the first time they heard "Do You Believe in Miracles"? I mean, it may have been a week after. Right.
And 100%. So those things, right? The imagery and the sound that you put together, the same thing I would say about Tiger Woods when he chips in on number 16 to win his Masters.
Perfect.
Vern Lundquist was the announcer, and these moments, Jack Nicklaus, 1986, rolls in a bomb, and "Do You Believe?" I believe was the.
I think that was. I think that might have been Vern again. Was that on 16? Was that Vern when he goes, maybe?
That
yes,
Vern Lundquist, yeah, yes, sir, and "Do You Believe?" and like all these different things that we actually at home get to watch and listen.
Yeah, that's what
There's
I mean.
so much more to the experience, right? When you're watching sport, so. And then you can be someone who's actually in the building, and what you get is all that ambient noise and the craziness and the fanfare, which if you're at home, it's a completely different experience. Maybe that's why tickets cost so much, because it's special to be in the building.
Yeah, it's wild that you had like that call. Yeah, that's always fascinated me. Like what is, when you think back on it, because everyone but you hears that, right? Basically, like, you didn't actually get that part of the experience.
Oh, I didn't. But guess what? I get to live with it the rest of my life, which is amazing. And you know what? It's funny. It too shall pass, right? So all these great moments, you got to wake up tomorrow and things are different. But it set me off on a trajectory that, you know what? It's a feather in my cap. It's something that is associated with me, and certainly in the sporting realm, it's cool, and it gives me instant credibility that, hey, I was a player and I did something good as a player. And then the next greatest thing would be when you're actually doing these things and you actually have success and you win. The next greatest moment, or the greatest moment, because it was with your teammates, was winning a championship. Winning the Stanley Cup, which was, the process, how long it takes from being drafted to making the NHL to try. It was in my 16th season in the NHL that just the way it all happened for me. I got traded from Colorado at the trade deadline with the Avalanche. Woke up the next morning in Anaheim, went to practice, and 3 months later, I was in the middle of the ice hoisting a Stanley Cup with my teammates. And you don't win a championship unless everybody within that team actually provided value and provides value and and extra value at different times. We had players that you probably haven't heard of, and you probably, Chris, but most hockey fans don't know of Joe Motzko. They don't know of Aaron Rome. They don't know of Mark Hardigan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Drew Miller, Ryan Shannon, these are names that aren't household names. And I'm telling you what, we didn't win a Stanley Cup without them. Each and every one of those guys made a significant impact. When we think of our team that won a Stanley Cup, and every team that does, you think of the stars. For us, it was Scott Niedermayer and Chris Pronger. J.S. Giguère was our goaltender. But we had Ilya Bryzgalov, who stood on his head in the first round. And we may lose to the Minnesota Wild in the first round if Briz didn't play as well as he did while Jiggy was actually rehabbing. He was injured. And then you got Tammus, and then you got, who was a Hall of Famer, Andy McDonald, incredible player. But then how about these guys? Chris Kunitz ends up winning 4 cups, becomes left wing with Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh. Dustin Penner wins another one with the LA Kings with the experience he had in Anaheim. And then you got 2 young superstars that are going to both be in the Hall of Fame, I have to believe, Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have 10 other guys that I haven't even mentioned, but every one of those guys made a significant impact at a pivotal time in what, one series to another. But it takes a team to win a championship in hockey. It's not necessarily just a pitcher who, wins 3 games in a World Series, because he can come back and throw in the 7th game. Not demeaning baseball by any means, but hockey's really, it's the total team. Offensive players have to play defense and have to make that, that sacrificing block shot or injure yourself. You're not just doing one job. You got to do it all together.
Well, to your point, you look at an NBA game. I mean, in a pinch, these guys, the starting 5 could play the entire game.
Right.
I mean, even your best player in hockey is going to play a third of the game. He's going to be on the bench for 2/3 of the game, even if you're your best player. But let me ask you this. So you're a deadline pickup from Colorado, right?
Yes.
So what's the vibe like when you go in that room and I don't know who went back to Colorado, was Futures or whatnot, but I mean, somebody who's in that room is coming out of the lineup, presumably to make room for you. So is there sort of an awkwardness there at all at the beginning?
Well, so there was no actual player in that trade that came back the other way. Official NHL player. Let me put it that way. It was
someone
a young
came out of the lineup to make room for you.
But somebody would have had to actually take a second seat for sure, or a back seat. All those other players I spoke of are guys that got plugged in. They came up from the minors. They were with us through the playoffs. Joe Motzko didn't play his first game in the NHL until we were in the conference final against the Detroit Red Wings. Drew Miller came in because I got suspended for 3 games, and he came in relief. I say relief of me, but they had a left winger that could actually do other things, and Drew played incredible for us in this pursuit. So I'm just thinking about all the things that have to happen. When I got traded for a guy named Michael Wall. It was a goaltender. I've never met Michael. I would love to meet him at one point. Maybe we'll get him on the podcast and talk about it. Now, that's obviously glorifying my experience. And Michael went on, to Colorado or wherever else he played. I'm a winner there. So the second time I was traded at the trade deadline as a player, ironically to the same general manager. Brian Burke brought me back to Vancouver for a second stint in Vancouver. Signed me to a 2-year contract after that. So I played for Brian 4 different teams, twice in Vancouver, couple years in Anaheim, and then he traded for me, which enabled me to play my 1,000th game for the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2009. Berkey brought me to Toronto, but with the experience I had being traded at the trade deadline, two things I can say. One thing's unequivocal. Nobody can question what I have to say here is I got traded at the deadline. I was the only guy they picked up and brought into the team that was new, a foreign player that wasn't part of what they had done all season. And I didn't screw up the mission. I didn't screw it up. We ended up winning, right? So I can say that with like utmost confidence. Now, of course, I did some good things too, but I came in as a part of this already wonderful team. And the second thing about being traded at the trade deadline, with my experience of going back to Vancouver, my role in Vancouver, or my presence in that locker room where I had been for a few seasons, 3 years prior, was the ability to kind of adapt and understand that you're not the same person, right? Not the same player, not the same person, and you don't have the same clout or impact necessarily inside that locker room. These younger guys that you were with 3 years earlier are leading the team. You got the Sedin twins who are there, and they're ready to break out, Hall of Fame players. Marcus Naslund and Todd Bertuzzi and Brendan Morrison and Ed Jovanovski, all these guys, they're older and they're more senior in that locker room or in that team as a player, their presence, than I could ever be. Understanding that, knowing that you don't want to disrupt what's already there, and just find a way. I'm a social guy, so you pick up on social cues. Maybe this is a time, Brad. Shut your mouth, and the leadership is rests on the leadership that's already currently there. But understanding also that you're brought in for certain reasons. Brian and I say Brian Burke, I'm talking about. Berkey knew me inside and out, of what I can bring to a team, and as a teammate, with full authority to step in. Whatever I see, I can call it out, or I could make that impact on a player, on a moment, maybe on the team at one time or another. But understanding that chemistry, you bring in a bad apple, or not even a bad apple, you bring in someone with a different set of ideas, values, views, all of a sudden you could screw up the chemistry on a team awfully
Well,
quick.
look what's happening in Vancouver this year. I know it's not a deadline pickup, but they had a serious chemistry issue, right?
And that chemistry comes and goes, and it's very difficult to keep that chemistry for a long period of time. So my answer to your question is, I was already experienced going into, albeit it was a previous team that I was on, and I played with half of the guys, understanding where do you fit. And I think I did a pretty good job with that, understanding that I'm not the guy. I'm in a secondary role for sure, but that doesn't mean that you can't make an impact and improve the play of your teammates, or certainly their focus, right, and energy. So I'm incredibly proud of that. But the guys that I played with in Anaheim, I could talk all day about each and every one of them. I know everything about these guys, where they came from, who their partners were, their children, their families, what got them motivated, what didn't, and that's what you do. You sit down, you become friends, but family with these guys. And the longer you play in these special moments, these guys that are going to play in it's a short tournament, but the guys, both teams, the Americans, all four teams, will know and understand each other so much better. They're going to be friends for life. These are moments that I think hockey does a great job with, but all of team sport, that's maybe the best part about the whole game is the relationships you develop with your teammates.
Absolutely. You talked about relationship and talked about Berkey, brought you back to a couple of teams. Any interesting stories about Berkey? Because we've heard so many great stories about him. He's a character. He's wild. He's a yeller. He looks angry all the time. Tell us something about Berkey.
God, you know what? He's my favorite guy in hockey. My favorite coach in hockey was Ted Nolan in Buffalo. Yeah. And I had good coaches, and I had some guys that I didn't maybe see eye to eye with, but you still, you got to go and do your job. Brian Burke's my biggest ally in hockey. I played for him 4 times. Amazing guy, gruff as they come. Just he never put his tie on. He's got a chew in his mouth. He's just, that image. But funny, it was a Halloween party in Vancouver. He had just taken over. He had signed me to a contract, 2-year deal, and it was about maybe November. It was a Halloween party, but I don't know if we had the Halloween party prior to Halloween or a couple days after. And Berkey came. He always does. Shows up because he's invited, but he only has his one drink, and then he has a couple conversations and he leaves because he wants his team to do what they do, and without the eyeballs of management above them in the room. But Berkey shows up and he's welcome too. He called me aside at the bar. It was in Yaletown in Vancouver. And he takes me aside at the Century Grill and he says, Brad, I know it's not going the way you think it should be going. At that time, whatever. I wasn't getting as much ice so it's such a fluid situation. Things happen. One week you're good, next week you're the dog's ass and whatever else. So he takes me aside. He says, listen, I will not, and I'm on your team, and I want you, and I think you're valuable, and you're going to be a big part of this. I'm not the coach, and I got to tell you, don't come to me and talk to me about not playing and not coaching and or not getting played because the coach has other ideas. The moment I make a coaching decision is the day I should fire my coach. I hired the coach. I stay out of his realm. But let me tell you, stay vigilant, stay up, come with energy, and don't get down because I will do whatever it takes to keep you here. And if it means me trading players out to form that place that, Mark Crawford at the time, he has one choice and he's got to play you because there's nobody else. I'll make that happen. And if that doesn't happen, I will trade you to a great situation and we'll find that. But you gotta stay focused and don't get down. Stay up, right? Don't be a bad teammate and don't be selfish. And it was an amazing lesson I learned. And true to his word, less than a month later, he made a good trade, or a good trade for me, but a trade, brought in Felix Potvin from the New York Islanders, traded away Dave Scatchard, who turned out to be a really solid player, traded Billy McCult, who was a 20-goal scorer, and then they ended up trading Billy. But they moved out 2 wingers to have room for the players that were still there. And I owe that respect to Brian Burke. He was honest. But as honest as he was, he's like, listen, I could tell you you're great today, but if you play like shit this weekend, I'll be saying that you're shitty next week. So at the end of the day, hockey, it's a roller coaster ride. And somehow you got to find that level ground to actually operate and function. And it was a great conversation. So that's one good one about Berkey with he and I. I think it speaks of his character that, he didn't go over the coach's head and telling the coach what to do, because at the end of the day, you don't want to clip, you got to delegate responsibility. A lot of GMs and a lot of coaches, they don't have the ability to delegate responsibility. They're power hungry. And I don't think those relationships work that well. And fortunately, years later, Berkey and I won a Stanley Cup for the same team with the same group, or a different group, but we did it together. And when I see Berkey, it's a big hug always, and love that guy.
Nice. Do you guys do reunions with the cup winning team in Anaheim?
We did a 10-year reunion, which I guess it'll be a 20-year reunion in 2 years or 3 years, like 2 years from now, 2027. I imagine that they'll do something. I'm not sure if they will, but they did a 10-year anniversary. Not all of us could make it. Some guys were playing elsewhere. I was retired. A few other guys were retired and we could make it, but some guys were still playing for other NHL teams. Other guys were playing over in Europe. And there's probably half a dozen to 10 guys I've never seen since the day that we won the cup, or a couple days after partying with, that we just haven't been in the same circle. So it would be nice in 20 years. Maybe we're all done at that point. Corey Perry's still playing. That we could actually get to a location, all of us. I'm sure it's not going to happen, but as many as we possibly can, that would be really fun.
Now, I remember when you were just talking about Crawford and Berkey. I remember when Babcock was coaching the Leafs, and I heard him say once, the players can always sense what the relationship between the coach and the GM is there, and there can't be any soft place to land. Did you always, the teams you played for, could you get a sense of how those two guys were getting along?
For sure, but half the skill or awareness, maybe that's a skill, but first of all, it's out of your realm. You can't make decisions. You have zero control, so don't pay attention to it. Be aware of it, but don't let it affect your day to day, behavior or patterns. Who cares what's happening above you?
But did you ever get a sense, like, say that? Did you ever get a sense that? Because I'm sure you played on teams where there's been in-season coaching changes.
Oh,
so
yeah, for
did
sure.
Did you ever get a sense, but based on the relationship they had, were you ever thinking to yourself, "Oh, this coach is in trouble"?
Oh yeah, big time. So it started in Buffalo with John Muckler and Ted Nolan, and it was a very public breakup and crazy in the worst kind of way. We finished first in the Northeast Division. We lost to Philadelphia in the second round of the playoffs. Ted Nolan wins Coach of the Year. John Muckler wins General Manager of the Year. Michael Pekka wins the Selke Trophy, Best Defensive Player. Dominic Hasek wins the Hart Trophy and the Conn Smythe Trophy.
And the Vezina.
Excuse me, not Conn Smythe. The Hart and the Vezina, which, by the way, is absolutely amazing. The Buffalo Sabres won 5 of the major awards that are presented every year. And Teddy got fired, John got fired, and the president of the hockey team got let go. Now, there was an ownership change happening in the 90s in Buffalo, and this stuff happens. And somehow, Teddy Nolan was able to keep us together and out of all of that fray. And, of course, there was a lot of noise around us, but we had a group of knuckleheads that just loved playing and loved being together. And why worry about everyone else's relationships? Let's just stay tight together. It probably made us a stronger and better team. But yeah, like that's ultimate or utter dysfunction, in an organization when you actually were making progress. The all those moves provided Buffalo though a lot of current players. Lindy Ruff comes in with a new general manager and Darcy Regier, and they had some good success there.
They went to the
they went to the conference final, lost to Washington, and then the following year they lost to Dallas in the Stanley Cup final with that new leadership. So, I mean, a lot of these things, I didn't like the moves. It ended up ultimately probably getting me traded out of Buffalo because the guys that really believed and knew me, these new guys want to bring in their guys.
Yeah.
You know what? If that dysfunction didn't happen in Buffalo, I wouldn't have played for the other 6 cities that I loved and wouldn't have won a Stanley Cup. Just by the way, the dominoes fall. I'm thankful that I got traded because it gave me another whole view of many different opportunities and situations, and I love that. And in saying so, it's not that I didn't love Buffalo. I thought I was going to be in Buffalo for the rest of my life. I thought that I was part of that family, and I still am. But it's amazing if you ask me who do I cheer for, I cheer for players today. I respect the teams I played for. But I don't know the management structure in Vancouver today. No real personal relationships there. Vancouver's amazing. As an alumni to the Canucks, I can go out there and really, be part of something special. As for these other teams, but just your truth is your teammates and your experiences with the people in the city. I liked everywhere I played, but I don't cheer for those teams necessarily because what's the point? When I got traded from these teams, it's not like they call me a month later and say, "Hey, Brad, how are you doing? How's Bridget and how are the kids?" Right? That doesn't happen. It's a fast-moving game, and nobody gives a shit about me, right? They appreciated you when you were there. Maybe they traded you, and your life got upended. But then, as an individual, as a family, we have to figure out and try to make the most of it. And so, being traded, like, are we really that loyal? I'm not so sure we are. Some players have an opportunity to be loyal to a fan base and whatever. But you know what? Every time I played for a team, they got rid of me. I got dumped.
It's a business, man. It's an absolute business, right? So to go to that point, so you played for a couple of teams. You talked about your amazing family. Did they come with you each time you were traded? And how does that impact that? I mean, kids and school and life and wife and all of that stuff. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. And then kind of, I want to jump into one more question on alumni.
My wife and all my friends, their wives, are the champs of the family. Going through these experiences, I'm on an airplane, although it's not first class. I'm on an airplane. I fly to the next city. I get put up in a nice hotel. I'm probably eating a steak dinner the next night at a restaurant in that new city, and I get treated like $1,000,000. New friends, new opportunity, fresh slate, and my wife and children are at home. They miss their husband and dad, and my wife has to clean up the house, any mess I left behind, and everything else under the sun. And she's left to kind of pick up the pieces, arrange the move. And for me, it's like, hey, get it done as quickly as you can and get on an airplane. And I've got a place for us on the other end. Yes, they came with me every time. My kids, I think it was an unbelievable life as young kids, but I talked to them too, and they're like, listen, they love Colorado. They love their friendships in Colorado. My son played on a really fun hockey team in Colorado. The families, the parents, the kids were amazing. I was gone in a matter of a couple hours to never go back, like ever in that same situation. My kids had to leave school a week later and fly to California and go into a new school. They're at that age. The only times they didn't come with me was when I got traded from Anaheim to Toronto. That was in my 18th year. My son, the day I got traded on January 7th was my son's 13th birthday. I picked him up at school and said, son, I was traded earlier today. I know we had plans to go for dinner. I have to go to the rink and get my gear, whatever, because that's another hour and a half that I had to take out of my day. I'm going to pick you up and you're going to drive me to the airport. And I flew the red eye to Montreal to play a game the next day. And so so my son would say, his 13th birthday was exciting, but not what he set out for. Right. My daughter, her friendships and stuff, it wasn't easy, but they're very adaptable and resilient because of the experience. But this would never have happened for any player that gets traded, certainly multiple times, with a family, if you don't have an unbelievable partner that's actually willing to do what it takes and picks up the pieces and did it with grace and class. And I owe all of that seamless transition. Because as a player, all you do, you leave a bunch of friends and then you get welcomed by 20 new faces. That it's pretty simple. It was pretty cool. But my wife was
when you were in Anaheim, because I looked today, I noticed actually the Cup year, you played more games in just because of the timing of it. You actually played more playoff games than you did regular season games. So where are you like physically living while you're in Anaheim?
So when I got traded, call it the first week. Give a day or take a day. 1 week in the hotel right across from the arena in Anaheim, at the Ayers Hotel, which is right across from the Honda Center. But as I was doing this, my sister-in-law lived in Newport Beach, Corona del Mar. And so the moment my wife called her sister, they were born on the same day, 1 year apart. My wife and her sister, best friends, but never lived in the same area because we're out and about doing other things. She married an American guy, and they lived in Corona del Mar. So the day after I got traded, I drove to their house 30 minutes from the hotel I was staying in, and my sister-in-law had already inspected or went and looked at 2 schools and three rental houses. Because if my family's coming, we're not living in a hotel. Mm-hmm. So we ended up renting a house that my sister-in-law found. My wife and her sister spent every day for the next 3 months together, and the kids and the cousins and all of that. It was an incredible opportunity and experience for us. Funny to finish that story. Later that summer, I signed with Anaheim again. I had a chance to sign other places, but I wanted to go back to Anaheim. And the moment I signed, my first phone call was to my sister-in-law, Michelle. And I called her and I'm like, I got great news. And then she's like, what is it? I'm like, I just signed a 2-year deal with the Anaheim Ducks. We're coming back. And it was like a long pause. And she goes, Brad, I don't know how to tell you this, but her husband, Aldo actually sold his company. He's got a new job in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We learned that 2 days ago. Didn't know how to tell you, but we're moving to Tulsa. So that the dream only lasted for a few months together, but it was amazing. And they took off to Tulsa. They're still there, and we had a wonderful run in Southern California. We lived in Corona del Mar, one of the greatest, cutest towns, right on the water, great weather, and hockey. You know what? They love hockey out there. It's just that there's so much more to do. It maybe doesn't have the same fabric as a city like Montreal, where I just was, where it literally is. You can feel it. It's palpable. But when you're actually at the arena in Anaheim, at that time, sold out crowds, everybody jacked up to watch a really good team for the 3 years I was there and many years after. They're trying to get back to that same level, but it's not easy to be a winner in the NHL. Okay, so there's a couple different governing bodies, if you will. So there's the NHL alumni. So every player that plays, the moment whether you play one game or 2,000, you're a member of the NHL alumni. They're out of Toronto. That's where they operate. They have functions and events around North America in every marketplace, but certainly a lot of it happens here in Ontario. Because I live back here, and I got to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, kind of tied hand in hand. I would say I do a lot of things for the Maple Leafs or more because of opportunity more than anything. I'm grateful for that too. Being able to be a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs alumni is really extra special. The Buffalo Sabres, they do a great job. It's just a smaller marketplace, so there's less activities or events that they call you and the alumni do, although they do a fantastic job, and there's 60 or 70 active members, and maybe that number is even higher in Buffalo. Vancouver is amazing, the Vancouver Canucks, although it's on the other side of the country, so it's difficult to get, or just by time and distance. So I do go out. I have a few things. I don't do their weekly, monthly things, but they have a couple of events that are really, really well done, and they bring some players back, and I'm fortunate that they invite me back, so that's cool. The Coyotes, we have a golf tournament, but that's pretty much it for me. And they're not there anymore, although we're still going to run as not an alumni association because we're not part of it anymore. Although I think we're still a 501c3 charity that is going to raise money for sled hockey, for wounded veterans, and we also have a scholarship program through the Coyotes. So that golf tournament, lots of money raised that's going to be distributed around the Phoenix area. Which is really cool. Wayne McBean is the president. He does a fantastic job. Those were Anaheim. Because I'm not there anymore, I was for a little bit, but there's just not a lot of things going on, although a lot of things around the hockey games, but auxiliary events. A few of my teammates have tournaments, golf tournaments that you get invited to, but can you make it? I'm an insurance broker now, so I'm busy doing that, working, staying home with my kids. And then I'm trying to think what other teams I missed. The only two teams that I personally haven't had a chance. I've been invited, but the timing hasn't allowed itself. The Colorado Avalanche, which is fantastic. They do a great job in Colorado. They have a number of things they do. I get invited. It just hasn't been able to work in my schedule. But in the Detroit Red Wings, I'm going to play my first hockey game with the Detroit Red Wings next month. In Detroit. I think it's against the Montreal Canadiens. They're going to raise a bunch of money for local charities. And so they asked me to come out, and I'm going to do that. So it's a gift that keeps on giving, these relationships, and you're representing, of course, the real team, the current team, but the alumni stuff, you're with your peers, and you can still make an impact, do something to raise money for others and do it together and have a good time doing it. It's a perfect relationship.
Absolutely. So if you're playing in that Detroit alumni, say hi to Ed Mio for us.
Oh, Eddie.
I believe he's still playing as a goaltender, and a lot of goalies, as they retire, will play out or they don't play at all. And he is still kicking, man. I love that guy. Actually, I emulated all my style off of Eddie Mio. I just love the way he played, man. He was in that original trade with Gretzky back in the day.
So Eddie's amazing. What a nice man. He's an agent today. He evaluates kids. He's bringing, as an advisor and as an agent. He's best friends. Just to give the audience, whoever's listening, Eddie Mio is an ex-goaltender, good buddy, really good buddy, if not best friend with Wayne Gretzky. That's pretty good company to keep. And Eddie's amazing. He's a lot of fun. And he was with the Phoenix Coyotes when Wayne and his group with Mike Barnett took over our team in the ownership and management level when I was playing for the Coyotes. So Eddie was actually part of that staff. So we actually worked together a little bit as well.
And Rocco, wasn't he one of the first guys to wear like the modern style goalie mask, I think, right? And he had a really cool one with the wings, I remember. Yeah, invented that, yeah. Yeah, wings wedding.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, Eddie Mio's, anybody that's met him, he's a fantastic and fun guy to be around.
And just a really cool handle too, right? Eddie Mio. Yeah. I mean, that's just a really cool NHL 80s hockey game.
Yeah. So two things. I'm not embarrassed, but that kind of a reality TV person. In some ways, I was asked to do the Battle of the Blades, which was taking an NHL hockey player retired. Obviously, it's being filmed while the NHL season's on, so current players couldn't do it, nor would they. I was in season 3 of the Battle of the Blades. The first guys, the pioneers of it all, were Bob Probert, Ron Duguay, Claude Lemieux, Ty Domi, and others. And Claude actually told me, he's like, "Hey, listen, you should do this." It was a great experience and lots of fun, and it was actually very difficult. It was hard, and I was living and working in TV with Sportsnet at the time, and I did it, and it was amazing. So I actually figure skated with a partner, and we get partnered up with Olympians or world championship, world class figure skaters. And my partner was a girl by the name of Annabelle Langlois. She was a Canadian, or is a Canadian from Quebec. And Annabelle was in 2 Olympics, represented her country twice: Salt Lake City in 2002 and Vancouver in 2010. Her partner in the second Olympics, she had 2 different partners. Her partner is her husband today, and Cody. His name's Cody Hay. Cody was our coach. So first day that we get together and I have a partner, we get on the ice. I have figure skates on, no elbow pads. If you toe pick guys, you hit the ice and it doesn't feel very good. And probably did that 100 or 200 times, trying to learn how to skate with a different posture, the whole thing. Not to mention the ability to actually be choreographed and do something in sync with your partner, and then learn how to lift, spin, throw your partner like figure skaters do. It was an incredible experience. By doing that, and I had a wonderful time doing it. And we'll pull up the clips because it was actually amazing. But the production company, who are basically the leaders of all reality TV here in Canada, is a company called Insight Productions. And but a year or two later, after I did this, there was a kids show on YTV called Cash Craze, which is kind of like a mini Amazing Race meets Wipeout. So an aging older person, in my case, I'm the dad and my daughter. My daughter was, I think, 13 at the time, and we went on this show called Cash Craze, and we went and we lived in a hotel and got traveled around Ontario doing all these challenges and experiences in a race format. And we did that because one of the young producers that I met at Battle of the Blades took a liking to my daughter, and the same kind of similar, the same production company handles Big Brother and The Amazing Race and Traders and all these other shows. And for a number of years, they were like, "Hey, you should make a tape and fill out an application and see if you can get on the show." And we did that. And this past year, 2024 in April, we went on The Amazing Race Canada, and it was incredible. It was the best month I've ever spent with my daughter. Had an absolute blast. Imagine today they take your phone away, you have no money, and of course you're not without anything because you're actually with 100, 200 people that are actually running a show. But my daughter and I, we didn't talk, we didn't call home. Nobody other than the two of us knew where we were at that moment, and we got home a month later after starting the show. It was cool. It was a great experience. My daughter and I are like this. She's I could call her like almost my best friend, and she's just so amazing and beautiful. But she impressed me so much. And what 25-year-old young woman wants to hang with her dad for a straight month as a roommate, and to the point where we couldn't be 20 yards apart, right? We're in the room together. When we step out of the room, we have to be together, and you can only be 20 yards apart at any given time, and no connection to the rest of the world. I feel like I'm lucky. I feel like I got to steal a month of her time and her life, and she had to share it with me, and I think she enjoyed it too. That was cool. Yeah, I've had some good opportunities, man. And by the way, it all stems from being able to fight, skate, shoot, and hit. That it kind of set me up to have all these opportunities, from golf tournaments to TV shows to celebrations. It all comes back to one thing: the game of hockey is wonderful. Big time. And you know what? And now we're on the other side of it as a fan, just cheering on your country. And win or lose, it's just great watching because all these other relationships. But there's no question. I'm wearing red and white on Thursday night, and cheering for Canada. Not rooting against the United States, but cheering for Canada because the Americans that are playing, the guys running the team, John Torrell is on that bench, old coach of mine. I'd love to see everyone, hoist whatever it is or put a medal around their neck and be the winner. But you can only have one. And all I say is entertain us. Entertain us. Bring your best and entertain us. Hey, listen, you brought up Winnipeg. I played there. Obviously, played against the Winnipeg Jets twice before they went to Atlanta, and now when they're back, I didn't. That's not true. I didn't play against the new Winnipeg Jets, but Winnipeg actually, it's not the most desirable market in the wintertime. I mean, that's evident. But the hockey players that play there, they love it. They love the fanfare. They're treated like kings. It's actually a great market to play hockey, and I know that because I was traded by the Winnipeg. Well, I wasn't, but I was part of a trade with Dale Howardchuk going from Winnipeg to Buffalo, and Phil Housley going to Winnipeg with Scott Arniel and Jeff Parker. There was a swap of first round picks at the draft. I got selected by Buffalo because they moved up in the draft, and Winnipeg picked Keith Tkachuk. Full circle, talking about the Tkachuk brothers now. Keith's two boys. Winnipeg is a great place. Tammus loves Winnipeg. Teppo Newman and my captain in Phoenix loved Winnipeg. A lot of the management team that I was with in Phoenix, because Winnipeg moved to Phoenix the first time, they love Winnipeg. They miss Winnipeg.
Well, remember
So
Eddie
we
Olczyk
could bag on Winnipeg. What's that, Chris?
Remember Eddie Olczyk in the last game there? I mean, I think he was in tears, right?
Like Winnipeg, if you're a hockey player, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I guess in theory, yeah, I'd rather be in 70 degrees and sunny. Yeah, of course. But the fanfare you get in Winnipeg, you make the playoffs, and the whiteout that they have, that's legendary. If Winnipeg has success, those players are extremely happy to be in Winnipeg, for sure.
No, agreed. Crazy. Yeah, love it. Chris, any more questions? Any questions you want to ask?
Just a little colder than other places, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, living in Anaheim, going to a game at flip flops, so you got to be like, this is pretty good.
Pretty good. It's actually pretty exceptional. Actually, it's pretty exceptional.
Yeah, right.
Golfing every day. Yeah, you're living the dream.
And under the radar, right? Unlike when you're.
Well, that's where, depending on where you are in your life and your career, I was older when I got to Anaheim. I got to do a lot of other things that I wouldn't have lived in the same area. I would have been, talking about Anaheim, but same goes. Winnipeg, it's a family town, or a lot of these like smaller markets. You go home and you're cooking dinner and you're raising your kids, and they're playing in the local programs and the schools, and every place is valuable, and it's got something to offer. You just got to embrace it. I think I'm thankful I got traded. I'm thankful I got traded a bunch of times. I played for a bunch of great teams, and I enjoyed every place I played for many different reasons.
Well, listen, what a great first episode. Welcome back, guys. And I tell you, the Mayday, Chris, this has been such a blast talking to you guys with the background hockey going on, the Four Nations, the excitement. I can't wait to do this more. I hope you guys will join this process, and we continue this podcast on our episode 1, moving on to 2, 3, and hopefully a couple of 100. So I want to thank you guys for being a part of this. Mayday, any big plans for the next week? What do you got on the go?
You know what? I'm almost thinking I'm going to Boston on Thursday. I don't know. We'll see. But no, and then I'm going down to Florida on the weekend. I'm going to play in a hockey event, raising money for I believe it's breast cancer, but it may be maybe a slew of cancers. A foundation down in the Melbourne coast, which is about 45 minutes east of Orlando, it would be east of Orlando. And then coming back, I got a bunch of work to do. Anybody listening, I can take care of your insurance. Give me a call. That's what I do. Right from if you own 1,000 trucks, or you own a pipeline or gold mine, or just a motorcycle in a rental house, I'm your insurance guy. So reach out.
Absolutely. You guys do cross border, of course, right? You guys are global?
We do, yeah, we do. Our company we're an Aon company, but I work for a company called NFP. Cool part about NFP, we actually we insure the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, and big live events. I mean, pretty much anything that needs insurance, whether it's corporate benefits and whatever, our company does. And I'm right there in the wheelhouse. I don't have the experience in insurance as a young person entering the field, but I have a wealth of contacts. So I'm coming in from the other angle and no time to waste. So, and I'm your guy. I used to fight for my teammates, Rocco. Why wouldn't I fight for you?
Absolutely, man. I tell you, if we're going in a fight, buddy, you're coming in with me, man. That's the way. With those mitts you got, you're coming in with me, brother. I love it. I love it. All right, Chris, what do you got on the go, buddy?
Well, I was looking for an insurance company for my gold mine, and now I stumbled upon one right here. So
There you go. Yeah, yeah, we could
There
do it.
you
We
go.
could do it. Hey,
Um,
and that gold mine might be a Bitcoin mine. Whatever you need, I'm your guy.
I'm watching the hockey game on Thursday, like everybody else, right?
Well, let me know if you're down there. Maybe we can catch up. It'd be
I'm
fun
gonna be
to.
on my couch.
Yeah. Well,
Me too.
definitely.
Me too, Chris. I think. Me too.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, listen, for everybody out watching our first inaugural episode of Overtime with Mayday, I would like you guys to like, subscribe, and join us for our weekly podcast where you get your podcast. So be available. Hope to see you soon. Guys, thanks for everything. It's been a blast.
Thanks,
See you,
fellas.
boys.
All right.